Okay. I didn't realize I could pin myself, so you guys have a lot to look at today. All right, we're gonna give folks a little bit more time.
You're getting dangerous with this technology, Ari.
Look at
Thanks,
that
Austin.
Land Insight swag. That's a conversation starter.
Oh yeah, there we go. You like that?
Yeah.
For those of you who joined the founders list and the CEO list, wait till you see what we got for you. It's gonna be better than this shirt.
All right.
Well, I'll say this: as people join, we do have kind of an agenda that I put together. I think initially the idea of hopping on and just hopping right into the idea of just looking at scrubbing. It's nice, but at the end of the day, I think there's going to be a lot of benefit to getting on the same page when it comes to mindset, understanding the tool, and there's some of you in here who might not have scrubbed, so we want to talk to that as well. I'm actually going to pull up. I'm going to pull up Land Insights, and what I went ahead and did just in preparation for this call is I scrubbed 2 small lists. Right, last week we talked about Missouri, Arkansas, and Colorado, and while that it sounds like a good mix of markets, pulled some data, and I don't necessarily love where it was. Now, I have to admit I didn't go through extensive market research like I would normally when I was pulling this data. I was just pulling it based on last week's discussion. So I would definitely still do that. I would definitely still start with your market research. If you haven't, I'm going to plug it now. If you haven't seen it, the new course is out. We do have some of the old modules that Ryland did, but a lot of the kind of the usage of the platform, it's all been updated. So we put a lot of juicy stuff in there, and I highly recommend you go through it. A lot of those videos are sub 10 minutes too, and if you put it on like 1.7 times speed, maybe 2 times speed, you'll be through it pretty fast. So if any questions come up, you're always more than welcome to reach out to us. I think at the end of every video, I say that to the point where it might get annoying. So just keep in mind, we want you to be actively reaching out if you have questions. There's no harm in it. All right. That being said, just to kind of go through our agenda here, first I want to talk to the tool in general and give you an overview of it. Some of you may be using it but not really realize certain parts of it. So we're going to talk about that briefly. We're going to talk about maybe potential updates in the future if we can get some troops around those ideas. And then I want to actually look at what each scrub really is doing. I think that's really important because a lot of people are scrubbing. You have these lists that go through, and then we'll get questions on why did something show the certain way it showed. If you have an understanding of what the AI is doing, I don't think those questions will come through as often. I think you'll have a lot more clear of an idea of what you're looking for when you're scrubbing too, and what you expect. So from there, we're going to talk about mindset. I think John hit the nail on the head. There is a specific mindset that you can have when you hop into the scrubbing side of the platform. Not everybody's going to be doing the scrubbing themselves. Some people have VAs, and so we're going to talk briefly about that, what that might look like for each person, and then we'll talk about what scrubbing efficiency looks like. Okay, so and then of course after all that, we're going to scrub. So that's not actually going to take too much time. Awesome. Any questions before we get started? Okay.
Did you say there was new training in the training guide?
Yeah. So I'll actually show you. So let me share my screen.
It's okay. I know where it is. I think in the link. I just joined a little late. Missed the announcement.
Yeah, no worries. Can you all see my screen as well as? Actually, here, hold on. Let me do it this way.
We saw it.
You saw it? Okay. You guys can see this here?
Yep.
Okay, cool. So yeah, so in the course, I actually have to open this in an incognito window because I kind of have access to that admin side of it. But yes, the new course is in here. You'll notice the top has a table of contents. We have a little tour. We'll talk about some things, and you'll notice that this gets updated every once in a while. Obviously, not everybody's in here all the time, so I'll make small announcements as stuff actually gets uploaded. But that's the idea: is we want you to have kind of breathing content that continues to push you forward in your journey with Land Insights. Ryland's models under that foundational knowledge, and then really every other tab of the platform. You've got some juice in here that you can go look at. There's the webinar, the monthly calls, and some discounted tools as well. So I know we don't talk about it too much, but if you haven't used the data legend to get an idea of what's actually what's actually being considered in each one of these data points, I highly recommend you go look at that and give yourself a refresher. Okay, awesome. Everybody can still hear me? Cool.
Yep.
All right, so hear this. I appreciate all of you joining today. Okay. Invite went out to everybody. Only you guys showed up. I say only, but you got, this is a good group of people. So what I'm going to do is I want to honor what I said initially. If you showed up, I wanted to reward you. If you email hello@Land Insights right now, you can do it on your phone, or you can do it, on your computer if you're on your computer. Email me the word scrub. I'm going to send you 3,000 free scrubs right now. Well, I'm not going to send them right now. It'll take me some time, but I'm going to. If you send that email right now, I'll know that you were on the call, and I'll send that to you a little later down the line, either tonight or tomorrow. But I appreciate you all joining and participating. It's huge. And for those of you watching this in the future, just know that we're going to have a ton of other opportunities like this. So keep yourself involved. We're a living, kind of breathing platform here, a group of good people trying to increase your efficiency in this business. Okay, awesome. So appreciate you all doing that. I know I'm going to be blown up here in a second. I can already hear the notifications. What we want to talk about first is the scrub tool overview. So hopping into scrubbing, the first thing that you usually will do is start a new scrub. Okay, that can be done in the top right of your platform or in the top right of that tab. When you're doing this, there's a lot of people when you first start out, maybe you've never scrubbed before, you kind of just pull your data and you bring it in here. I highly suggest you don't just start out by doing that, because you'll miss the the point of what scrubbing needs, which is a very specific subset of data points, right? You need APN, you need Latin long. I've had multiple people reach out saying, "Hey, I don't have Latin long. How do I get it in there?" So notice what you need here. Take a screenshot or just put some random file in so you can see what needs to be mapped. And then after you do that, go ahead and pull the data with that in mind. Okay, as you push through that, you'll notice it's going to ask you like 5 times if you've mapped your stuff correctly. It's going to bring you to the next screen. It's going to talk about how much credits each scrub costs. And this is really where I want to take a moment and talk about what each scrub means. So landlocked scrubbing, a lot of people will make a note like, hey, this property does not have access when I'm looking at the scrub tool. So the scrub tool is considering all public access, all of it. So even though visually you might see some sort of road overlay that goes into a property, that does not mean that it is a public road. So just keep that in mind. The overlay is public and private. Now that does lead you to believe you may have the ability to get an easement on that. Just keep that in mind as you market to these places if you do include some of those properties in your data set. Okay, so if for whatever reason it looks like it's marked landlocked and you see an overlay of a road go right through it, that's why. It might be a private road. Wetlands is always going to be looking at water flow and accumulation. So it's always looking at either periodic or shallow water. It's very standard. USDA, I think it's the Army Corps of Engineers generally kind of come up with that delineation. So just keep in mind, it's very standard throughout our platform, Land ID, Data Tree, whatever other software you might be using. Flood zone is going to be based off of our 100-year floodplain. So this is super important. When we come out with our data product down the line, this will be something that you can easily kind of toggle between, but you want to be able to verify that your market, wherever you are, you're not scrubbing it if the entire thing's in that 100-year floodplain. You don't want to be putting yourself in that position where the entire list that you tried to scrub is just gone. So keep that in mind. Now, of course, you can always do a percentage of either of those, but still, you don't want to be scrubbing for something in a place where the majority of the market is under water or flood watch. Okay. Once you push that through, it'll talk about price and ask you to pay, but I'll actually do that with a different file. So I didn't push through our Arkansas data. I just want to showcase how fast this is when it comes to data. This is a smaller data set, just FYI, but I feel like it's worth bringing up because this data is going to be super scrub. I'm going to scrub for everything, and it's going to be super fast. John, what's up?
Sorry to slow you down off your mojo here, but I just wanted to ask, when you're starting the scrubs, when you're removing duplicates, because I know we've had this conversation ad nauseum, but does it, if you're selecting them both at the same time, landlocked and remove duplicates, does it scrub all of the landlocked properties first and then remove the duplicates, or vice versa? Does it remove all the duplicates first and then scrub those for landlocked?
Yeah, honestly, the order of operations, I usually get a lot of questions about this. It is looking for duplicates first, and so there's the possibility that one of those properties falls out. But I'm gonna pull something out of Ryland's book. It's not necessarily about finding that nuanced 1, 2, 3% of your list. Now, of course, there's always going to be opportunity in that 1, 2, 3%, and we've got some stuff in the works to kind of like remediate that, or remedy that. But overall, it's going to be right now more prone to scale. So it's not something that we've allowed folks to just go and deduplicate and then go and scrub, or scrub and then go back and deduplicate. So for now, that's just how it'll be. But in the future, that might change. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. So we're going to just scrub this. It's not that many, but you can kind of see exactly what that looks like. If you haven't scrubbed it all yet, it's queued up. It's going to start in here in a second, and then you'll just see that work right through it. Now, this wasn't a big list, but still, I scrubbed it for everything. So it'll be an interesting take. I may also use this list just because the potential that I saw in these markets was just that much higher. I saw, I think I have in this campaign X, I have like Tennessee, Missouri, potentially Ohio, just places where some opportunities are a lot more probable. I was looking at Colorado, I was looking at Missouri briefly as I scrubbed them before the call, just to kind of save time. And I got to be honest, some of these places they're not places I personally would market to. So we'll just have to keep that in mind once we get to it. But before we kind of hop into all of these lists, I wanted to say a couple things. So the mindset when scrubbing. John brought up Ryland. Ryland is a beast when it comes to scale and volume. However, he was having multiple people scrub his lists like day and night until just recently. Like when we increased the accuracy, I think right now it's sitting like from 91, 92, 93%. And it just depends on the data set and the quality of data. Once we got up to that, like that was his inkling to take his business to the next level. And that's why he started doing, he just let go all of those VAs who were scrubbing, and he just started doing volume through the platform, because letting in a couple bad properties, here and there, it really isn't going to affect as much when you're able to get out thousands and thousands of mailers that you weren't able to before, right? So just think of that in the terms of your business and efficiency. I have a couple talking points that I really want to touch on. I mean, first and foremost, this is the difference between like those in this business who are having a hard time understanding like what moves the needle, right? Like those who overthink, and I was stuck in this rut for a long time, but those who are overthinking, and then those who want to just scale, right? And have what it takes to scale. And this is one of those things. We literally, see a lot of our users claim that a VA might be more accurate at the end of the day because they can go through the entire data set, they can scrub for different things, all of that. And that's completely true. I think that certain opportunities, a VA will always be higher leverage than AI. But when we're talking about efficiency and getting through more and more data, AI is just going to beat VAs time again, because the consistency is is always going to remain. And if you can continue to pump higher and higher numbers that a VA can't compete with, it's just going to move you. It's just going to move you forward a lot faster. So just keep that in mind. I'm not that's not my argument to say that VAs aren't aren't warranted when it comes to scrubbing. But I will say we went from one extreme to the next, where a majority of the folks who were doing land were not scrubbing at all, like no scrubbing. And I think we all remember like the types of leads that we would get, even if we were scrubbing a little bit in 2023. I mean, it was light scrubbing. It was just like, let's make sure it's not in a flood zone, like approximately, like if it abuts one, or it's just like trying to click in data tree. And then maybe we're using a third party and not even able to see the list that they scrubbed. It was just very inefficient. And a lot of folks just said, I don't want to scrub. It just takes too much time. I'll get more value out of higher volume. And I mean, I know the leads that brought into my business. I'm sure all of you kind of have similar stories, but now we're at this point where everybody is so nuanced in their scrubbing that we're getting questions about why didn't this property, be considered? Why isn't this property considered landlocked if it has a road that's like, I don't know, like just a little bit off of it, and it seems like it could technically have road access, or you have VAs who are going through methodically tagging for every single thing. Now, I'll just put it out there, but I don't think there's one user using every single tag, and I think that's a good thing, right? We don't need to be using every single tag on every single property. I think eventually, maybe you have multiple data sets that you've touched multiple times and you get them there. But when you're getting data out initially, that's just not necessary. And we'll talk a little bit more about that here in a second. But one thing I also wanted to mention was, even though people are looking and reaching out about those nuances, we really focus on quality a little too much when we weren't even able to before, right? When I'm talking about one extreme to the next, it's really stunting us from being able to scale. And the whole point of this was to scale, not to get hung up on the properties that we're marketing to. So just keep that in mind as we go through these properties. The only other thing that I wanted to say on scrubbing was, it does make sense to use a VA when you're scrubbing for certain opportunities. Just how you do it can be made more efficient in certain circumstances, right? If you're having someone go through and say, hey, this is subdivide, this is wetlands, this is flood zone, and confirm whether it's landlocked. They're looking for a lot on one property, and it might take them more time per property to get through your list. So what if you instead, right, John, trust that AI a little bit, you push that data through, and now that you've marketed to it, you have them go back through it for subdivide opportunities afterwards. And then you have another campaign that you can market to down the line, or remarket to down the line. So, these are the kinds of things that will start moving the needle in your business to get leads in the door and then get those larger opportunities teed up. So just keep that in mind as we look through some of these data sets. You can already see that Arkansas list finished pretty fast. It wasn't too big, but I'm going to talk briefly to the overview or the overlay and the format of the feature, and then we're going to hop right into some of these lists. That was a lot of talking. Anyone have questions? Yeah, Kathy. You're all good. I can't unmute you. You might have to get Andy to talk. No worries. Anybody else have questions in the meantime while she's trying to unmute herself?
Okay, I think I did.
Oh, I got you.
Oh my Lord. The interface looks different tonight. Like I had my hand raised, but could you see that I had my hand raised? My virtual hand?
Yeah, I can. I have to look to the side a little bit, but I can.
Oh, okay, because it looked different on my screen. Anyway, I was just wondering if Rylan had did any cost comparisons using the virtual assistant versus what he's paying for scrubbing, if you have any data on that.
I actually think he's doing that now. He's seen, in terms of cost, I don't know if he would have those. I haven't asked him for those numbers specifically. I'd be curious too, but I do know volume-wise, I mean, he's pumping out thousands, and I think tens of thousands more than he was when he had VAs going through everything. And I think there's another scrubbing we don't really talk about right? Which is the due diligence when we get leads. And if we're scrubbing on the front end and scrubbing those out on the back end, like our data just continues to become refined. So over time, I think that the value in terms of cost, it's hard to say that it would ever be more valuable with a VA, but I will say, it compounds. It's a force multiplier, if you will. It's definitely not going to be solely the cost of scrubbing, right? It's not literally the cost. It's the removal of bad leads coming into your call center, right? Or time spent on comping, or time spent with these leads when you don't know if the property is worth it, or finding realtors, or looking into research on regulations, or convincing a funder that it's worth it, or potentially sitting on market for a long time. So there's a lot that compounds when we scrub. And I guess if you're scrubbing at volume, then the scale of will always be more cost effective. Right? It'll always be lower than if you were to compare that to the same volume with a VA, in my opinion. But I can definitely ask for details. I'm curious myself.
Yeah.
One thing, if I can share real quick, that Rylan left me an audio message that kind of really hammered it home, was just what he had found. I don't know how he got those metrics or numbers, but he thought, or he realized that, being 90+% accurate with the AI only scrubbing, when you had all these VAs spending hours and hours in time, when he realized that the human element to that, they were only more like 70% accurate. So you could be taking out properties and vice versa. It can have that counterproductive effect where when at the end of the day, you just, to scale.
It's subjectivity. Yeah, no, it's what is accurate to you, what is good to you, and that's the issue too with VAs. From time to time, is you might have to check their work, or maybe you get a lead that you weren't expecting to get, and it's like, well, if I was going to get that anyway, why didn't I just use the AI and base my decision off of that? And so I think the subjectivity of every single land investor will always play a part. But if you, even if you decide you can't let go of VA holding the reins on this process, like at least only have them go through the good on a list, skim through it. We'll talk about the efficiency side of this. I think that the epitome of efficiency is going through only the clean results and pulling those out. But we'll talk about a couple other ways to make this useful.
So let me say one other thing. So how much is it to do one record in this system? I know it depends if you're pulling everything using all the filters. So like 6 cents, 8 cents.
So if we're doing all the filters, I think right now it comes out to 10. But
so I guess what I'm asking is, if it cost me 10 cents per record on this system, I wonder how much it's costing per record for a VA. But then even if the VA could do it less expensive, what I hear you saying is that the time component is going to outweigh it.
Oh, 100%. But I think we're also going to be like, let's just say it was the same cost, right?
Mm-hmm.
10 cents per record, if you could say that for a VA. We're going to beat that too. I think with a new data platform, when we get our unlimited plan rolled out, if you haven't opted in, or if you're not a part of that, when you inevitably join, because this thing is going to be bonkers, there will be a bundle price for these scrubs to make it just absolutely just an absolutely easy decision to just use scrubbing. And so that cost is going to keep going down. And with unlimited data, like this becomes this just becomes a very, very useful strategy to scale your business. So yeah.
Gotcha. Thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. Peter, what's up?
I had to find the mute button. There we go. Hey, Ari, what I learned recently and might be useful if people don't know this already is that there is a back-end cost currently for us because we don't own the data to scrub. Yeah. Once we own the data, our back-end cost will go down, which then gets passed on.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, we've had, this isn't something that we've really spoken to too much, but we increased accuracy. And if you recall back when we started the scrub tool, one of the things was that, hey, this is in beta. It's not that accurate. And so because it's not that accurate, it's at a discount. Well, we haven't increased that price because we really do value our users and all the feedback. And most of this success, like the success of the land scrubber, comes from you guys participating in using it. So it didn't feel right initially. I think right now we're trying to continue to build up a process that makes sense for that price. But right now it's staying at what it is, and in the future that might change, but it's going to be based on like Pete said, as we can remove costs from our side, you guys are also going to feel that overall. And I think that's the goal, is to make it as efficient as possible for everyone. Yeah, appreciate you bringing that up. Anyone else have questions?
All right, quick one on the feedback that we give the model, whether it's landlocked or contours or wetlands or whatever. Is that training the AI model, or are you guys the only ones training the model?
Yeah, so we use the data sets that you all upload, but we do have a I would call it a check and balance process that goes
Like
into it.
Okay.
Yeah, and so like for example, Kyle will literally go through data sets and he'll confirm that things are accurate, which is huge when you're trying to train the algorithm. So like I think one of our recent case studies was like 14,000 records. That was first something that I think we scrubbed through the platform, and then we pushed it his way. He confirmed it, and then we continued to increase that algorithm. I don't know anything about algorithm or back end, so you'll have to forgive me on that. But yeah, that's something that we have to do in order to make sure that human element is pushing us forward for sure. But AI is pretty bonkers. Okay, so that being said, all of that is leading up to us actually looking through a data set. So one of the things I think that John had brought up initially when he brought up this idea was like, how does everybody think about these different properties that we see? Now, I mentioned earlier when we started this call, so this is in, it's in, almost there, Larimer County. And truth be told, I've never marketed here before, but this is something that I think a lot of people don't think about, is when you have like a VA scrub through here, is this considered an odd shape? Curious to hear your thoughts.
Yes.
Okay. Would you look into subdividing this, Austin?
It's also landlocked. Well, no, it's not. Never mind.
So,
well, I take that back, man. How many acres is it?
Yeah, you'd have to look.
It's odd shaped if it's 1 acre. If it's 20 acres, if 20 acres, it may not be odd shaped.
Yeah, there you go. So that's really what I was going to get to as well. It's like stuff like this. Now, if I do have a VA going in for subdivide opportunities, this is the type of stuff that I'm going to tag. I think there's probably some level of due diligence in the future that, some SOP or process that you could put in place to vet, whether or not this could be subdivided. But I'm going to be as clear as possible. I would not just go around looking for subdivided opportunities if you haven't vetted that a market can be subdivided, right? If the regulations aren't in your favor. So, this is one of the reasons why I brought up that other campaign that I sent to, or I scrubbed through for Tennessee. It's like, well, in that particular data set, I happen to know what to look out for. In Colorado, I might not. And so if I find a 20-acre parcel and I don't know that I can cut it into 5 acres each, it's going to be harder for me to say, yes, this is worth it. And I think that's something that you should have set aside for anyone who's going through these. If a VA is going through this and says, okay, well, how do I make the judgment call that this is subdivide worthy? Well, you couldn't even do it, Austin, just by looking at it, because you don't know the regulation in this county. And so I think having that kind of structure, setting someone up for success when they go into a scrub session, is super important. If you're looking for subdivide opportunities, give them what they need. If you tell them that they need 50 feet of access, say, okay, well, if I wanted to cut this up, does this have 50 feet of access? You could do that, that math, whatever it might be, or they can use a ruler to figure that out. So just something to consider. I saw a hand go up, I think.
Yeah. Hey, Ari, can you hear me?
Yeah.
It's Andy.
How are you, Andy?
Hey, good. My background is land development. I mean, this is, subdivide is I eat that for breakfast. So anyway, Austin, you're right. It depends on the size, obviously. When we're talking about minor subdivisions, it's not quite as important, the orientation of the lots and that kind of stuff. That looks kind of hilly, so maybe a west facing might have a better view and that kind of stuff. But you also have to think about what's around it. If there's a junkyard beside it or something like that. So there's a lot more that goes into subdividable, and versus odd size properties and that kind of stuff. I mean,
so Andy, is this something you would shy away from?
Again, how many acres is it?
This is 20. Yeah, this is 20.
Yeah.
Now, if let's say if there was a minor, an exemption of maybe 5 acres.
Yeah, I'd look at that all day and say, okay, even if I got two lots out of it, no problem.
Right.
I mean, it's definitely odd shaped. But if that's deeded road access, you're essentially cutting the one piece in half, so you could have 3 parcels, or 4 or whatever. But yeah, I think you could do that. Once you cut it up, people won't recognize that it was ever an odd shaped parcel.
So tell me this: if you were looking to do a subdivide opportunity with this parcel, you knew you could cut it into 5 acres each, are you willing to come up on that offer percentage?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, assuming that the 5 acres were going good and it wasn't out absolutely in the middle of nowhere.
Right.
It doesn't look like tree farm property. I don't see any patterns to that. So that bare area is just kind of naturally bare. Those are evergreens, so that tells me that the soil is somewhat sandy. Yeah, I mean, a lot of things tick off in my head. Yeah, septic's probably available if it's sandy type soil. So
yeah, awesome. Do you think?
Yeah, well, I'm just kind of skimming the surface, but yeah, that to me looks easily subdividable if there's a 5 acre, if that's the minimum. Sure.
Yeah, I agree with you. And Bradley just made a comment, 10 cents per record, sounding better and better as we go on here. Yeah, I completely agree. The thing is though, that will get cheaper, so keep an eye out. Awesome. Well, I'm gonna say one more thing before we kind of start hunting through here. And that's the different scrubs. Like if I mentioned it earlier, but if I was coming through here and looking for every single one of these, and I had that mentality of let me look for every single thing that I can tag this for, I'm going to spend a lot of time on this individual property. And for someone who's a VA who might, everyone's human, maybe they have issues overthinking things too, that's just going to compound that time. So if someone's going through this and scrubbing for one thing, I have to be as transparent as I possibly can be here, but it's always going to be faster if you just hunt through a list and look for subdivides without focusing on all this other stuff as noise. Someone can hold their finger over one of those keys and just go right through it. Now, that's if you're trying to be as efficient as possible with those opportunities. Otherwise, I think there's value in going through these scrubs, especially with someone who has that number keypad and has the drill down really easily. Yeah, what's up, Andy?
Hey, so if your AI, if this AI is learning from everybody who looks at this particular parcel, and it records that, wouldn't that screw up the validation? Because if I'm looking just for subdivide, and I hit no, that's going to have that little cloud on it. But if it is really a good subdivide for somebody else, it could eventually read to where it wouldn't be good.
I think that's a good question. So I mentioned earlier that we have like a check and balance before ultimately the algorithm's impacted. So no, it wouldn't directly do that. We have to verify a couple things before everything really gets impacted in the platform. But I will say that's one thing that we've kind of solved for too, is just like personal preference. There are going to be people who come in here and call it nod shape when it's a square, right? Or call it entitlement when it's, and we're not actually doing anything with these ones here for your use, but like if someone comes in, marks it flood zone, there's absolutely no flood zone. Like we have to account for that for sure. Awesome.
Yeah, I just want to respond to Andy's comment for the benefit of, I guess, the whole group here. Andy, that's a great question. When you get into a tiebreaker situation, what happens is the AI model won't decide one way or the other which way you need to go. right? So what you can do is there's 3 different ways to think about this. There's supervised learning models, unsupervised learning models, and semi-supervised learning models. Unsupervised is exactly what it says. It's like you don't have a kindergarten teacher and the class just goes wild and they learn what they learned, right? Without any kind of governance around it. Supervised learning is exactly what Ari's talking about, in which case, if you had no user and only Kyle was going in there saying, yep, this is good, this is bad, that is all purely supervised learning. What we're talking about here is semi-supervised, which is user input. Same thing if you're doing a chat window and the AI model says, did I get that right? And then you say, no, actually, I wanted this. That's semi-supervised because it's learning from the user. And when you get into a tiebreaker, then it kind of kicks it up to say, hey, I'm out of options here. Let me ask the supervisor as to what he should be doing. So the unsupervised model acts like a semi-supervised model starts acting like a supervised model to get that input from the teacher, so to speak, if you will, just to kind of answer your concern. So there is that governance in place, and that's how behind the scenes, that's kind of how the models work.
Appreciate that, Austin. Yeah, that even elaborates further for me too, as someone who's kind of not on that side of things. So I will say, looking at this data set, there are a lot of properties like this. You might be tricked by some of these public or private trail type things as well. So just be cautious of that. That's also something to kind of pass on to your VA if they're going through this. I will say though, a majority of these, like the data that's coming through, when I'm pulling this, I don't even know if this is a permanent structure. It looks like it could just be an RV. Yeah, probably is an RV. And so, I might still market to this, but this isn't my idea of a beautiful deal most of the time. Now that first deal we looked at is very possible, but you're starting to see a lot of structures in here. And I'd much prefer to look at something like this. So even with this topography, I'm still skeptical. So what I want to do is let's hop out. I think that was Colorado. Let's look at Missouri. Missouri's a lot more flat in some places. So one thing I wanted to do as well is look at only bad properties. One thing your VAs could do is hunt through here looking for opportunity. I'm just not sure how many of you actually prefer to do that. A lot of this does look like farmland as well. But creating an easement, let's say just from the Navy Drive over here over to your parcel, it's something that could create value, but not a lot of investors are doing. Maybe even from this private road over here, not a lot of investors are doing that because it's going to disrupt efficiency, especially the more you get, right? These types of leads will slow you down immensely. I'm curious to hear anybody's thoughts on that. John, what's up?
Right. Yeah, Ari. And one thing, it's more of a statement, but as far as for the model that Leah teaches and that we're doing, unless you have some sort of, because if you're just uploading a campaign for blind offers, 50% or whatever it is, unless you have some sort of a system on the back end for okay, what happens when you tag it subdivide? When you export that data list, what are you doing with it? Are you offer pricing those differently? Are you sending a different mailer? Unless you have any of that set up on the back end for what your different business model is towards those, it's a waste of time.
Yeah, right? I completely agree. And I will say, if you're not there yet, that's okay. If you still want to have someone go back through and tag for subdivide, or let's just say you have extra time on your hands, tagging for subdivides might not be the best use of that time, but it's fun. It's still fun. You could have a VA do it though and spend time focusing on other areas of your business, creating SOPs, making hires, and setting yourself up for success in the long run. I agree with you completely. It's not worth tagging if you're not there yet, if you don't have something to support all of that. And that's why using the AI can be super beneficial, is because the hardest part about starting is getting that momentum. And if you use the AI scrub, it's going to push that momentum so much faster than it could have in the past, because now you can hit volume, and it's not just volume, it's volume of good properties. So keep that in mind. And obviously something terrible might slip into that data set. Let's just say this maybe looked like a public road, maybe it's private road, whatever it is, and it excites you, but it's not worth anything. That's going to happen regardless if you're scrubbing with AI or not. So just keep that in mind. Your VA could have easily said this was a public road.
Right. Yeah. Or if it was close enough to a road and you're like, oh, I could probably get an easement, or we could probably make this work. Okay, well, when you tag that or when you do that, how does that get filtered out or different in your data set in the end? How do you even go back to that parcel or have any way of reconciling to
without
go
going
after-
one by one.
Right, right.
Yeah, so
Just a
you
comment.
don't want to put yourself in a position to just ruin the efficiency on the back end and when you're getting leads, because the idea is when you get this data ready to price, or like when you get it ready and it's ready to price, it's like that you just want to get right through and then send off. Maybe you have some checks and balances right before you send it off, but you're not sitting there and looking at each thing on Land ID anymore. If you're doing that, you're really slowing down your process. Arnell, what's up, man?
Hey, what's going on, brother? How's everybody doing?
Good. It's good to see you, man.
Likewise. Yeah, just quick question, man. Just staying on the private easement topic.
Yeah.
Will that devalue the price of the property? Because I mean, well, I won't say devalue, but I don't think
lower the market value.
Okay. Because I had quite a few of those, man. And I know no one wants a private easement going straight through their
Well, that wasn't my answer. I wasn't just saying that it would lower it. I was just trying to reframe what you were saying. So I'll say this: certain places in Tennessee, I have seen that easements does not matter as long as that thing is 50 feet of road frontage. If you can access that property and that property can have a septic on it, like that thing will sell like a hotcake, and it doesn't affect market value at all. I'd be curious to hear of other people's experience, but it just depends on the market because. And this is one benefit of having realtor partners like in specific markets or reaching out to them because those are the types of questions they can answer easily, right? Based on current demand, based on the people who are trying to buy right now, and whether or not the market is selling for those properties that do have an easement, because they'll know, they should know of all the active inventory. They should know their competition. Now, if they're a good realtor, they'll be able to tell you pretty easily.
Roger that. Appreciate that, man. Yeah,
I wouldn't give up on every single lead if you've already got a couple kind of stacked up like that. But I'm not going to be the expert on finding an easement or getting someone to build an easement. You got to find the easement doctor. I don't know who that is, but you got to find someone. I think Sumner's team. I would recommend reaching out to Sumner's team on any of those deals. I know that he's done that quite a few times. There might be one or two other people in Leah who have done that. So let's go ahead and hop over. Peter, I'll take a question in just a sec. Oh, and then I saw.
I'm sorry, I was just trying to lower my hand.
Oh, you're all good. Okay, I'm going to go to this larger campaign, some more flat land. I think this will be a little bit more fun for us to go through. Let me just kind of skip down here to like some random number I haven't been to yet. Okay, so Pete, you have something?
I just want to chime in for a second with a slight counterpoint a little bit on the mindset, which is not, I'm going to preface this with, this is not right or wrong, and I might change my mindset in a month or two, but here's the mindset I'm looking at when I'm looking at potential landlocked versus for sure landlocked. Like if there's a road really close and it looks like I might, I train my VA to go ahead and put those in personally. Might be wrong and I might change it, like I said. But my thought is, if I'm getting rid of like 80 to 90+% of the truly landlocked stuff, I don't mind getting a few leads where, I can then renegotiate, right? If it's an easement, if that's going to affect value a little bit, I'd rather get that lead and potentially, get a better price and be able to get that deal. Again, not saying that's right or wrong, but just another.
No, I think that's a fair point. I think John was speaking to mainly focusing and like repricing based on that, right? When you're sending out that marketing, and I think that's both those points are very, very fair. I think also, we really do have to think back to where we were just a year and a half ago. We weren't scrubbing. Most of us weren't scrubbing anything. Now there's still some folks out there who maybe had a VA kind of spot check, or maybe you were doing it yourself. I still know a couple of investors who are doing this themselves, like almost full time. And I'm talking about scrubbing, like going through their own data sets. But with what we've got going here, I mean, this is just creating efficiency like we've never seen in real estate, to be honest with you. There's no other way in real estate that you can target such high quality leads like this. Obviously, you can't control those leads reaching out to you. Might be a little different than some platforms, or some means of investing. But this is unlike any other channel out there. So, yeah, I think I'd back you on that. I'd say, if I have someone going through here and I see that, I tell them just include it. But I'd also say, if you're okay with that, Pete, maybe we just rely on AI. You know what I mean? So,
Yeah,
there's
for
definitely.
sure. I probably will tend toward that. Right now, I have a cheap PA, and he's pretty darn good. I trained him on to go through all. He can go through over 500 pretty quickly in an hour. He's getting closer to 1,000. So for right now, I figure for the extra $100 per couple thousand records or whatever it cost me for him to go through, it's totally worth it. And but that might change soon.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Michael, what's up, man? Let me see if I can find
Hey, how often do you just take the data set with the items already removed out of it, not even bother with the review? Do you just typically just rip down the data set, or do you often feel you need to review the items that were flagged?
Are you asking me personally, or are you asking it kind of as a broad sense?
You personally and both.
Yeah,
actually, I'll say you and your close friends inside of Leah, Sumner, Dennis, etc.
So, okay, I have a tendency to come back into these data sets and like take a peek at what's up. But generally that's after I've already taken the data out. So like this is my mindset. I'm on the path of least resistance. I got into this business to get time back in my life. And I realized that maybe there's a world where if I double down on these lists hard enough, like the only leads that will ever come into my business are the premier top of the list, top of the food chain type leads that just get me further than absolutely any investor. But if I want time back in my life and more volume over time, this list is only going to continue to compound. And like I mentioned earlier, I can always disqualify a lead when it comes in, and I'm still saving money. So I would say probably 9 times out of 10, unless I know that I want to like there's subdivide opportunities in a certain market, I'll pull out. I'll literally fight myself on going through the data set. Now I still love going through the data set, like I mentioned, but I'll pull out only clean to start, and then I will go on with my life. I do have a tendency to like zoom through this while I'm drinking coffee, so that's just kind of like something I do in the morning. But I don't know how.
When you do go through it while you're drinking your coffee, do you self-validate yourself? Like, yeah, I made the right decision. It wasn't worth my time. I'm glad. It seems to be pretty accurate. Of course, there's going to be a parcel or two there that was on the line, and I could see a road there. I could probably make it work, et cetera, et cetera. But
yeah,
it's one in 1,000, right?
Well, I wouldn't say that me drinking my coffee, looking through the scrub tool is like a needle moving event. But I will say that when I do it, I'm not necessarily doing it to validate my choice. I'm doing it to just see what I can expect if I do get any leads in this particular market. And it also does help if you just like land a lot. If you're coming through here and you're sorting by acreage, maybe you want to look at the small acreage first and you just kind of go through this. That's the cool thing, is you should be able to sort this, I believe, like a pricing sheet. Throw that pricing sheet up, and you can also validate maybe the prices that you sent out just by coming down here and like clicking through these APNs or whatever it might be, and just saying, yeah, I would have done this that way again if I had the choice. I think it's obviously probably should do that level of due diligence as you're pricing, but I still like to do that validation a little bit. It's mostly just to see what I can expect from that mailer.
Yeah, and that's cool. For me, I use this. I use the scrubbing part at the very end. I'm already comfortable with my pricing, etc. It's
Nice.
more about removing those properties that have no access, that are really dysfunctional, if you will, too steep,
Sure.
et cetera. And from that perspective, I think I've looked at it maybe once or twice, and you know what, I'm going to put my bets with the technology or what you guys have done to say it mostly works. Okay.
Yeah.
And I'm not looking for perfection here. And if it
Yeah,
throws out a few parcels that were otherwise good, okay, great. Well, I'm on to the next one. I'm on to the next tree.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and that's only going to continue to improve. I think the idea, like you said, it doesn't need to be perfect to be absolutely amazing in this business. yeah, the fact that I would even employ, or multiple people would employ multiple people just to scrub their list, sometimes without even a decent visualization, is just wild to think back on. So I'm curious. So this is Tennessee. So looking at these lists, like, you're starting to see a lot of different opportunities when it comes to understanding like subdivide potential. Now, stuff like this kind of screams clear a little area for a home. This is the type of thing that I'm tagging for subdivide opportunities, especially once I confirm the acreage is once I confirm that the acreage is fairly consistent with my subdivide regulations. Now, I actually think I'm looking at all properties, but generally I would be going through the good ones. So just keep that in mind as well. It's just going to depend on where you want to head. Let me actually open up the chat really quick. How soon before we see road frontage scrubbing tool? That's likely when I'll switch to LI scrubbing. Yeah, dude. I think so. Bradley, I think there's a lot of value in road frontage, but I still think that you're gonna increase the value of your marketing if you were to use the scrubbing now. That's not to upsell this. Really, once that is released, I think it's going to be with. I think it's going to be with the January release in our data platform. Once our data platform's live, and that's just because of bandwidth. And the tool that Kyle has kind of gone underway for quite a while is it's bonkers. It's more than just road frontage, and it's going to be really, really useful, more useful than anything else on the market. So yeah, January. I know that in November and September, there's a couple of other drops of certain features. I think in September there was the intention to kind of add the marketing tool or of some sort, and then in November I think we're going to move towards the actual data platform. So that's something that a lot of people in here have mentioned. Like, we want owner names to pop up, or we want certain things to pop up, show here data points, and that's been really hard when we don't own the data. So consider that now things will look a little bit differently as we progress. The types of requests we can honor when we actually own the data, it's going to be wild. Okay, so when we're looking at this, at properties like this, obviously this has access. I'm not really thinking about this in terms of subdivided potential, but one thing that I do consider is like stuff like this. For example, I happen to know that I think it's 5-acre exemption in Tennessee. Even stuff like this, you can definitely make. I mean, this is calling out to me subdivide. I've had one other property like this where someone it was the state actually claimed eminent domain right in between someone's land, splitting it into two, but it was technically one parcel. When you're buying a parcel like that, you have a subdivide that's already subdivided. All you need is a survey. And some might argue that's all you ever need, but it was with everything in terms of that property. It already even had a road going through the middle of it, yet it was still one parcel. Like, these opportunities, people tend to say, hey, that's an odd shape. That's where some money is made. And this, I think, it probably looks like closer to 10 acres. Actually, let me look at the number. It's only number 5. Number 5 is 17 acres. So, we're looking back. I went back one page. So 10.5 acres. So I would even be curious to see if I can split this in half. I'm curious, for those of you who have done subdivides or are looking to do subdivides, are you open to clearing a space? Are you open to creating home sites or gravel home sites, things like that? Here, actually, something like this. You see if I can do it. Can you all see that?
Yeah, we can see it.
Yes, sir.
So something like that. I mean, when you have a property like this, has anyone gone through that?
No.
How about you, Andy?
I'll be honest, most of my land development experience subdivisions have been, 150 lots and stuff. I mean, I come from a much bigger background, but yeah, I mean, that kind of stuff all day. Typically when Kathy and I travel, we're in North Carolina mountains now on the third month of our vacation this summer. And we're looking for property all the time that I can subdivide out and basically get a free $50,000 lot out of, you know, for a dream home or something. So yeah, that kind of stuff plays well. And again, if 5 acre lots are selling, shoot, that's super easy. The the development cost of something like that, in terms of just clearing and throwing in some gravel's super simple. And you just have to make sure that it's going to perk, would be the only other weird thing. But yeah, all day.
Yeah, and that's something that I've actually I've noticed. If you have certain connections, I mean, everything's who you know, and I realize that the more I know people, the more people I know. In certain areas, for example, I think I was doing a couple deals in Washington, and I think the title agent screwed up on the closing docs, and I got paid $1,000 less, and they ended up. I got paid $1,000 less because they charged the seller or the buyer $1,000 less. So ultimately, I just made $1,000 less than I was expecting, and I just treated it as no big deal. I said, hey, just scratch my back next time, and they gave me the largest discount. They said the next property I go through closing absolutely free, saving way more than $1,000. And that stuff is no joke. I mean, that continues to compound if you're in the same market. And so, finding someone who clears land and then just telling them, well, look, I'm looking to do this more often. If you can cut me a discount, I'm going to bring more your way. The same goes for someone doing perk tests. I know someone in a very small community in New Hampshire, because I have properties I bought out there, and I just kept speaking to people, and he was just like, yeah, I'll charge you a lot less for your perk test. And so, that's a huge area of kind of untapped value that a lot of people don't think of. Definitely ascribe some value to your partners out there.
All right, can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
So, as far as the LEA business model, at least me personally, my efficiency for this is just landlocked, flood zone. Is this a county? Is this a parcel I want to mail to? Blind offer, price it. But if you're tagging this as subdivide, what are you doing with it when you get your data set later? Are you actually mailing them a higher price? Are you like filtering that data set out from your data set? Like, how are you?
Yeah.
For me, it's like if I get a lead and it's subdividable, oh, cool, then I'll go about that route.
Yeah. Well, I think that kind of focuses on what Leah has taught a lot of us. Now, there's a lot of people here who have not gone through Sumner's program, so just keep that in mind.
Gotcha.
But what really John's getting at is just the fact that in Leah, it's very common that we don't target subdivides. At least we haven't in the past, just by virtue of just doing flips. And through that, usually your subdivide opportunities kind of just fall in your lap. I have stuck to that. So I will say I've had a couple fall in my lap that I have considered doing subdivides on that just didn't work out. I tend to just stick to flips in terms of finding my data and trying to price it for flips. And then that makes the subdivide even juicier when it does fall in my lap. Now, I could probably go through, like, my whole goal is to eventually have an entire list of subdivide tagged properties. But what I mentioned earlier is my mentality, which is I go through, I'll send it out, and then my goal is to have someone come back behind me and just scrub it for subdivide, creating a huge list, because eventually I'm going to need to remail these markets. I've already chosen the market because it's good. I've already chosen the data. So going back with a remail campaign only targeting subdivides, I mean, that's a really high value play. But I don't currently do that. I don't currently go through and price my mailers like at 70 to 85% because I have a subdivide. I don't think historically too many folks have done that. I'd be curious to hear what others have to say. Awesome. What you got? You're muted, my friend.
Thank you. I was just checking if you were paying attention to what I was saying. Thank you for that. I typically look at wetlands and landlocked. Okay. And I kind of assume that if there is a floodplain, well, we'll deal with the floodplain if that is an issue, but I primarily go for both of those. And I'm happy to just go the 10-cent route and add it all, or sign up for the CEO or founders program when you guys roll that out. Question is really around two things. One, I'm in the process of thinking, one, should I hire a low-cost VA and have him go through everything, have him or her go through everything, and that way we can get really crisp on what is subdivided, what is not. And then also look at all the other things. So that's one approach. The other is to just sign up for the AI and go that route. Problem is, there's been some counties where, I mean, you and I talked about this on our last call. Some counties, it's great. Other counties, is more of a margin of error, it seems. So what's your thinking around that, as opposed to in context of my hiring decision?
Austin, you're bringing out the questions, the coach questions. Honestly, I think it's always going to be higher value to focus on volume, just at the end of the day. And look how far you've come, literally doing mail, right? I know you mentioned that you might go into texting at one point. I don't think you started yet, have you?
No, not yet.
Yeah. So, I mean, at this point, with how far you've come, I know you had a good number of deals under contract on the market and kind of in the sales process. I think volume is still the answer. I'm always going to say that. And I'm always going to say it, especially when you're using something like our scrub tool. I will say, though, you're always going to be able to kind of siphon value from those lists that are already probably really high quality when you have someone go in behind, right? And scrub after. There's a lot of people scrubbing before right now, and that will always limit the volume you can do. You'll have to always chase a volume goal and try and make a deadline. Whereas if you just keep pushing out, obviously, as long as you can afford that, you're going to be able to scale a lot faster. So long as the market's good, the data's good. After that, like I mentioned, if you go back behind it, you're going to be able to kind of pull out opportunities, potentially even kind of retroactively clean up a list if you'd want, and then pull it out again for the future. But that's not going to stop you from hitting your numbers at all. So I don't think that, I think hiring someone to go through it isn't a bad idea, but if they're doing it before you send it out, I do think it'll limit how fast you can get your volume out the door.
Okay, so your answer is Land Insights is option one. You know, if you want somebody to go take a second look at it, that's good, but it's optional. Question is, when you say before or after, it sounds like before the mail goes out. I mean, I'll do all of this before the mail goes out, right?
Yeah, I mean that's a lot of people's preference. That's why I'm here to kind of.
After, though? What do you mean by after, though?
Well, after is going to be like really future minded, right? Like I'm sending this out only using the clean results to get the volume out the door, to continue hitting higher and higher volume. Now I can go through the markets. This is a good example, actually, because we had kind of a crappy market, in my opinion, for subdivides, which was maybe it's not this one, but it was that Colorado or maybe it was Arkansas, whatever it was. It's just like in the middle of nowhere, and the roads are just absolutely all over the place. Here we go. So this is a good example. I would deprioritize having someone come back through this list and look for subdivide opportunities, regardless
you mean
of
looking for subdivide only. That's what you mean, not looking for wetlands and flood zones and all that.
Well, that's what I was saying earlier. Is you may have someone come through and do that. You may.
After.
Yeah,
Why after?
I mean, well, for me personally, it's just the path of least resistance. For someone else, it's going to be a different. There's a lot of people who do want to make sure that the leads that come in are always vetted, and that means always having wetlands and flood zone tagged, yes or no. But if you're just focusing on the AI, you're cool with only landlocked, for example, in this case, and you don't use wetlands or flood zone, as long as you know that market's not completely under wetlands and flood zone, I'm comfortable sending that mail out personally. When I come back to these markets to find more potential, I also already have a feeler for the types of leads I would get from that market. And I'm not speaking about the people, I'm speaking about the properties. I may have learned a thing or two at that point. And if I'm looking for subdivide opportunities, I'm going to have a preference. Do I want to choose this market here, or do I want to go back to that other campaign where I was looking in Tennessee? And so I'll know where I want my VA to go and look for those subdivide opportunities.
Okay.
That way, I'm not forcing myself to look for them in every single market that I go to.
Yeah.
So
Okay. Well, I see very little value in personally and after the fact. I think it's only some from what you're saying is, look, don't go the manual route if it's going to limit and throttle your mail volumes.
100%.
Go the Land Insights route, and if it doesn't throttle you, then keep going with Land Insights. If you have somebody and you've got some way to do that, then that's the idea, is to get a manual VA to do it.
Yeah, and there's tons of different perspectives on this, Austin. So just because we might disagree on that, I will say, the purpose is the same, right? The purpose is to find those opportunities.
Sure.
And if you're doing it after the fact to create a remarketing campaign that's solely for the subdivide opportunity in that market, maybe you'll find more value in that concept, but it really is going to be dependent on the investor.
That makes sense. And look, this is blind offer, mail oriented. If you were to do neutral letters or range offers, or use it for texting or ringless voicemail, or cold calling even, does the framework or criteria change in any way?
I'd say maybe for cold calling and okay, so I think it'd depend on your offer. Are you doing ranges? Are you doing neutrals? If you're doing neutrals, I don't really think I would be scrubbing meticulously, because neutrals generally produce the most leads. I personally haven't done too many neutral letters. I've done a ton of range, and I got to be honest, I like blinds better than ranges. Even though ranges feel, as an investor, they feel more logical. Feels like, hey, I have a top side and a bottom side, and if it's worst case scenario, I'm still within my range. But it it looks perfect on paper, but when you get these leads, they're, first of all, there's less, and second of all, they're not always, in my opinion, they're just not always as good, not as always qualified like a blind offer lead, in my opinion. So
okay, that's great. Thank you.
Yeah. So I'm curious. I'm just hopping out and kind of refreshing the screen here. If I come back to this, let's take a look at some more properties. I'm actually going to skip down quite a bit, so we can just kind of get an idea of what's in here. So this is a perfect example of like the AI not tagging that this is landlocked. Why? Not sure if it knows of any public way to get to this property, but if it's me, that's a perfect example of like what will creep into your data set. This too. So keep in mind, over 90% accurate. I think it's 91 to 93% accurate depending on the quality of the data. Now I pulled, I think, 10 counties of data and slapped them all together here. Let me see if that's what county this is in. State, Meigs County. Yeah, so this is Meigs. So Meigs might be different. Meigs might not have that great of data. Or this might be the same owner. But this is going to be cool, because one of the things that we can do in the future, and there might be something here, but this does look like, to Andy's point earlier, this looks like something that might have been logged in the past. Something that could potentially be worked with, but yeah, I'm not sure. I wouldn't be too keen if I were going through initially. I wouldn't be too keen on finding that property. If we're looking at Meigs, let's look at RIA really quick. RIA County. Oh my gosh, I couldn't have clicked on a better property. Like this is the kind of thing that, oh no, it's not terrible. I'd say you could probably create something out of this. I've done a steeper lot in New Hampshire. Now, would I say it's perfect? No, but I think you could probably still do something out of it. I think this is it's probably a flat area as well, but I'd want to see topography. That shoots down. It's actually, yeah, it shoots down a couple hundred feet. So, of course, they're both in the data set. Yeah. So, I'm curious. Now, if there were subdivides all around this, Andy, is this screaming your name?
Oh, absolutely. Whenever I look at something like that, I got to think, and everybody's seen the the big box, Best Buy, Target Plaza or something, that there's just this random corner there's still an old single wide on it or an old house, right?
Yeah.
It's because that person didn't want to sell to the developer because they were, raising their fist in the hurricane, right? And so I see something like that and go, okay, yeah, there was a subdivision. I guarantee that person in the middle got an offer on their property, but they didn't want to take it. Okay, that's fine. We'll go around you. But now it's the only thing you can do with, or the highest and best use for that one would be to subdivide it just like the rest of that. But
yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, even this is looking. This is why I love places like Tennessee. West Tennessee, a little bit more flat. Even this could be a great hunting property, especially if you split it. I think there's still a lot of potential here. Yeah.
Or a rec property, how much would you say is the cutoff for size? Like, at what point would you say it's too small to cut?
To cut, like to make it small.
Yeah, if you were to subdivide a recreational property, 20 acres, cut it into 2 lots.
I dealt with a recreational property in Ohio that was like, I think it was a little under 7 acres, but it was right next to a stream, and it did really well, I guess, for whitetail deer. I don't know that there's a minimum. I don't know if any. I'm not an expert on on hunting land. Honestly, I think Sumner. I might have to ask Sumner. Sumner's been I know his team's been dealing a lot in like Wisconsin or Michigan areas. But yeah, I am by no means an expert in that space. Or maybe this was thinking that there's some sort of access up here. I'm not sure why this one was tagged. Looks like that might be it. I'm curious. Anyone else deal with hunting land pretty consistently? Is that you, Austin? You raise your hand. So what's the answer?
Man, I got a 50-acre lot. I might cut it up. I didn't think about cutting it up. It's on an uphill. That's the problem.
Okay. Yeah. I had a lead in Minnesota. I think no, I think it was another one in Ohio. That was like 200 acres, and it was just all on the side of a mountain, and I couldn't make it work. I think I had spoken with a realtor, someone else who was focused on hunting. It was a whitetail guy, and no, it was Mossy Oak guy, and he said, I don't think any hunters are going to want to climb it. So I think it's just depends on the property for sure.
Right.
Yeah, this is screaming Andy's name.
It is, except that when you zoom out a little bit, look at all the paper subdivision work around it. I don't see any structures. So yeah, I'm not so sure I would jump on that from a short-term play to subdivide it, because I mean, somebody's done a subdivision on the old family farm hoping to do the same thing, but it doesn't look like it's super popular. So
and one thing I would do, and this will be useful in the data platform, but if you check the owners of these lots, make sure that they're not the same owner. If they are the same owner, there's still a good chance that there's something worth looking at here, at least. I've had a lot, 20 acres in Texas, where the owner cut it all up with the county into I think it was like 2-acre lots, and they didn't know what to do with it. Now, I was not the best option for them. I think going with a realtor was ultimately what happened, but that's a good point. That's a good point. If you see something like this, it could just be a defunct subdivision. If you look in Colorado, there are plenty of those. Doesn't mean there's not an opportunity for money, but it's definitely not going to be your normal flip. You're going to have to find somebody who's just like kind of looking for land, kind of looking to own, and it might be their first property. I sold I think it was just like a 0.3 acre lot in one of these little subdivisions that I bought on a corner. It was like the smallest corner lot, something like this, and bought it for 10, sold it for 32, 34, 32, something like that. So there's still potential out there, but I completely agree. You got to be careful what you talk yourself into when you see these these properties.
The other thing I would say too, I'm seeing a lot of that kind of stuff, like where they'll do a subdivision and you can get those lots for dirt cheap, but really what you're buying is a community dock at the end. If that's on some body of water right there, now you have deeded dock access for fishing or whatever, boating.
Yeah.
And there's no real value in the lot itself. It's just now you have access to that body of water.
Yeah, and that's actually very common. That's super common on rivers in Tennessee, Georgia, and then also lakes in places like Vermont, New Hampshire, Maryland, like small lake. Well, not Maryland, Maine. Like there are a lot of properties that kind of sit in communities that all of the community has deeded lake access to a single like drop off point or dock area. So yeah, that's definitely something to consider. Awesome. Yeah, we've been at it for a while. I know we haven't been going through like routinely like a VA might go through, but I think the value has come from the dialogue here. I'm gonna say it one more time. I know that I think only a couple folks have joined, or there's been a couple who have fallen off. But if you haven't, email me the word scrub. I'm gonna send you 3,000 free scrubs. I'm gonna take care of you. I appreciate you joining tonight and participating as well. Arnell, hope you heard that. I know you joined a little after I said that earlier. Ben, what's up, man?
I don't know if you saw my email that came in today, but I had an interesting situation where I was like going through and scrubbing, and
I did see it.
Yeah, it was like this weird situation where like this same house in this little subdivision kept popping up as I was going through, and it's like deja vu. And then I looked through and like realized in my data set it was like a truncated. That long, but I was just wondering.
So I think it was the data, right? So yeah, no, I actually think so. What happened, just for everybody here? So in Ben's data set, there was actually a ton of properties that shared the same GPS coordinates when it came to the platform. The platform, I think, looked at basically the first couple of digits of that longitude and the latitude, and it was cut off, and it was the same for every property. Isn't that right?
Yeah. So there's like, I mean, out of like 1,000, there was like 6 of them that had the kind of the same one. And
so
you guys flagged it correctly on the right hand side. I don't know if you can sort by that right now on your data set and see if you have any of those.
Yeah.
But there's some that say couldn't find match.
Yeah, and so basically what'll happen when you do this is you really don't know what you're looking at. It's just tagging like a parcel, like one of the last parcels that have come through your data set over and over again, because you're looking at basically new parcels that haven't been found. So I know I do agree with you. I think that's an awesome area for opportunity there to even put something like this parcel wasn't found, and kind of like push you off of the assumption that you're looking at the current parcel, right?
Yeah, because I was going through all of them and I was like, there's a structure on this one, there's a structure on this one. But then I was like, wait a second, these are 20-acre properties, not like 0.2. So basically, if you guys have that note on there, couldn't find match, if there's some way that you could visually do like just or like just don't display it visually, because right now it's like representing that it's something that it's a little confusing for.
Yeah, it's definitely it's a give and take. We'll have to figure out a solution. If you or if anyone here has an idea on like what you would prefer to see when that happens, send it our way. Send an email, hello@landinsights.co. The reason why I say that is because initially we had it show a black screen. I don't know if anyone remembers that, but we got a lot of people reaching out about a black screen in their data set, and that is why that issue with GPS coordinates will continue to disrupt your data set. So we didn't want to just absolutely ignore it and punt it out of your data set when you can technically still mail for those properties. But if the data is not top tier and we can't actually locate the property, you're not going to be able to scrub for it.
Yeah, I think I just like if you have like an overlay, even like in the bottom right hand corner or somewhere that's like clearly visible, that basically just says like this parcel may not be what you're looking at. And when you're like just like going through, rather than like a black screen, for me, like, and maybe it would be for everyone else, but like for me, it would just be like anytime that you have lat long coordinates that only have like 3 decimals after the point, those are pretty much never going to be accurate. Yeah. Like that's clearly just something that's right there. And even if you just like have a little explainer, like, hey, your data set does not provide, clear lat long coordinates for this, so this is like an approximation or a guess, like then I can just be like, okay, ignore that, don't tag it, and we'll mail it because I don't want to like lock into those out. Or, you know, people can make their own educated decision. But having some sort of disclaimer that just says, because the lat long thing is pretty cut and dry. If you only have like 3 things after the data point, you're almost never going to be looking at the exact parcel.
Yeah, were you going through all or your data set, the entire data set?
No, I was going to like the bad/unknown.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, that'll definitely pop up. Yeah, I think that'd be something to look at. And I also think, you know, we highlight it down here so that you don't lose track, but there's probably another I don't know what that might look like. Maybe even highlighting something up here to show that it's like red or something, like you mentioned. So yeah, we'll take it to the drawing board. I'm curious about it. I already brought it up to the team, so I'll probably respond to you after this call formally through email.
No rush, yeah. And if you want me to, you know, write up a suggestion, I'm happy to do that as well. Just wanted to raise it because I thought it was interesting. You guys are tagging it. You know the data is there.
Yep.
You're like, hey, this is not quite there.
Exactly.
Visual heads up as you're scrolling through would be sweet.
Yeah, exactly. No, that's a great suggestion. Hey, anybody else have really questions of any sort before we hop off for the night? Yeah, we've had awesome discussion. Okay. Hey, if anything else comes up, I think I like this model, kind of hopping onto these calls, doing a collaborative discussion, figuring things out together. Let me know what other, you can do this in the Discord, but let us know what other ideas you might have in terms of content or collaboration. I think there's still a lot of ways to improve our businesses and continue improving. Yeah, I think that's all I've got for you today. But again, you will see pretty soon here all of the free scrubs that we'll send your way. And if anybody has any issues, always feel free to reach out.
All right, thanks again for putting this together, man. Really appreciate it. It was super helpful.
Yeah, absolutely, everybody. All right, everybody have a great afternoon,
Thanks,
great
guys.
evening.
You too. Thanks for the new updated content and land insights too, man.
Hey, absolutely. Hope you like it.
Yes,
A lot of
sir.
good stuff in there.
All right, brother. Peace. God bless.